What's up, lifers? Welcome back to 30 to Life. So, today I wanted to share with you guys a little bit of my upbringing, some of my past. Maybe for some of y'all, when I share this, it can help answer a few things in your lives. As a kid, I didn't really have it too bad. I had both parents. My dad was actually my stepdad, but at the time growing up, until I was 13 years old, I didn't know he was my stepdad. I always thought he was my real dad. Just one of those secrets that was kept from me. But I'll get more into that a little later. Growing up as a kid, though, it was a pretty good household. My parents were good people. My mom always made sure she told us she loved us. My dad was more old school, so he wasn't into sharing those kind of feelings. You know, the old school men, they didn't want to talk about things like that because it was a sign of weakness, a sign of being soft. It was different. But other things, though, he taught me how to fish, taught me about a lot of things that, helped me in later on in life. So he was an overall good dad. He had his issues. He was in the military and ended up later as working in correctional facilities, which is kind of ironic that I ended up in a place like that. But, so he's old school, tough guy, and good dad overall. He had his drinking problems and, something that he's always dealt with his whole life. But for the most part, decent dude. I think where things really went bad is when I was a kid, my mom and my dad worked a lot. My mom, she just really didn't pay attention to us in the sense to where as far as safety goes. And, I was always running around outside playing and doing other things or just playing with family like cousins that would visit or anything like that. And I don't think my mom really, felt that she needed to watch me, back then. But things happen, I suffered abuse without my mom's knowledge. Same with my sisters. And, it's just something that we never got to talk about with them. And that's because of the lack of communication as far as sharing your feelings, as far as, sitting your kids down and talking with them and just knowing every little part of their lives. My parents didn't really do that. So as you get older and you're dealing with this type of stuff, it really just turns into anger and violence when it comes to like young boys. And so that's kind of how I defended myself for most of my life and learned how to protect myself. But it was just something my parents couldn't understand why I was lashing out at a young age. By the time I was 12 years old, I had been to juvenile hall. And so, it was just off the hook. I was drinking alcohol all the time at a young age. So I think my parents were, trying to give me a better start in life, maybe trying to help out. So they decided to send me to the islands. They sent me to Hawaii to live with family. So I go out to Hawaii and I'm out there now. I'm 12 years old, about to turn 13, and I'm out there and it's just a total culture shock. I had no idea what it was like to be an islander, to be Samoan, grow up in a Samoan family or anything like that. Being with my mom, she didn't really speak Samoan in the house. The only time I would hear her speaking is when she was, cussing us out or something like that, or speaking with family members on the phone. So it was just a total culture shock when I went to Hawaii, and I was forced to go to school out there and live with family members. And it just didn't really work out. My aunt, she would always beat me. And, so I suffered a lot of abuse from my aunt. And I ended up running away from them, and living on the streets for a long time in Hawaii. I slept in parks. I stole clothes from clotheslines. I stole people's shoes from the outside of their house. Good looking out for not wearing shoes in the house. So that's how I got my clothes and shoes for many years. Not many years, but I think about at least 2 years, 2.5 years, I was homeless. And during that time, I would go into juvenile hall, and my family members would come get me out, and they would just drop me off back on the streets. So I ran the streets in Hawaii for a long time, getting in trouble, abusing alcohol, getting more violent as time went on, just fighting all the time out there in the islands. And it got to the point where the judge, it got to the point where one time I was locked up and the judge was like, look, you're not even, a native to this island. You're just a visitor. And he was saying to me, basically, if you don't leave this island, I'm going to lock you up for a very long time. So he was basically kicking me off the island in Hawaii. So my mom had to come out and she had to go to court and promise to take me home. And he said, if I ever come back to Hawaii, if I don't leave, he's going to put a bench warrant out for my arrest. So I pretty much had no choice. I had to go back to the mainland, back to California. So I go back to California after years of bullshit living in Hawaii. And now I'm back in California. And I guess my parents just like pretty much were like, fuck it, because by the time I got back, I think I was like 14, 15. I know I was like 15. Yeah. 15, almost 16. Yeah. So I get back and I think my parents were just like, fuck it. He's not going to listen, whatever, so they didn't put me back in school. And so I just ran the streets all day, every day. And, just kept getting worse. I was drinking alcohol. I was drinking all my dad's alcohol. And even one time I drank so much fucking alcohol that my little sister, who passed away of cancer, had to see me all drunk and acting stupid. And I just had no sense about reality or anything at this point. She had to call the ambulance, and I went to the hospital, and the whole nine. Had to get my stomach pumped and eat charcoal, all this bullshit. Didn't know what was going on. But anyways, and I was just a kid. I was just a teenager. So alcohol became one of the things that I just abused all the time. So by the time I was 17, I was in and out of juvenile hall and just constantly getting arrested. No school, no education, running the streets, hanging out with people who just didn't give a fuck about their lives neither. And eventually I ended up catching a case to where I shot somebody and went to CYA with a 9-year sentence. So I'll tell you guys that story about CYA and how I ended up there. But, just all the things that I went through, and then you guys know, of course, I went to prison eventually later in my adulthood. So after all the shit I've been through, I realized that there was just a lot of shit within me that I wasn't dealing with. At first, I always blamed everybody else. I felt like my parents failed me. I felt like society failed me. I felt like there was no mentors in my life, no real adults in my life. And I blamed everyone. I blamed everybody forever. And, it just came to the point where I've been locked up so much that when I finally, after bypassing YA and going through all that bullshit and ended up in prison, I finally had to just look at myself and say, damn, man, maybe you're the fucking problem, Ron. It took a long time to acknowledge that because I was just so hurt and angry with the people in my lives, the abuse I suffered, just everything. And I never took accountability, but the day I started taking accountability is the day my life started changing. I started realizing like, hey man, I got to be responsible for my actions. Got to be responsible for who I am and who I want to be. And I didn't want to be in jail for the rest of my life, even though I got a life sentence at the time. I didn't want to get in any more trouble. I just couldn't understand why I was always getting in trouble. Honestly, it was like I wanted to go home, and then I get home, and then next thing I know, I'm back in and can't figure out how the fuck I got myself back in there. It was just a constant revolving door. So when I caught my life sentence, I had to take accountability. I didn't know I was ever going to go home again, but I had to realize like, hey, you know what? You put yourself here, Ron. You you hurt somebody, you know? And I started realizing and started getting down on myself more. Like, really thinking that, you know, I was a piece of shit and I did bad things in my life. So, started feeling like I deserved to be serving life in prison. So I went through a lot of these emotions and everything. And then eventually, you know, you come to the point, I finally, after being home, finally come to the point where I can't live like that. I can't sit here and beat myself up like that anymore. But I must take responsibility for any actions or any decisions that I make in my life. I have to, you know. I can't just always blame my childhood or my past or my parents or the lack of mentors or anything like that. I just can't always do that no more. And so now here we are, and I'm speaking with y'all. So if any of y'all are going through this shit where you're just going in and out of jail and you just can't figure out what the fuck is wrong with you, and you can't figure out why you so angry, you can't figure out why you keep making mistakes or hurting your family, people you love, putting people down, lashing out, whatever it is you're going through, man, I'm telling you, it's time to go within. It's time for you to really look at yourself and your whole fucking life and ask yourself, why? Why am I going through this? And what can I do to make this right in my life, to have a better life? So facing some of the shit in your life, man, it's a hard thing to do. You go through a lot of anger, hurt, sadness, but you have to work through that to better yourself. It's time to heal. So I hope this helps you guys, man. And as always, you know what it is. Stay the fuck out of trouble.